So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You know, they've always said the Parsis tend to be a little eccentric. And you can't help that. I mean, we're so brilliant, you can't help being eccentric. But we go back a long time, both of us, Noomi and myself, very down to earth, normal people. We tend to lose it once in a while, but most of the time, we're the same as everyone here. But let's start with Noomi, and let's start with the Bawa connection. No.
All right. Thank you, Cyrus.
Hello.
Let me start by saying we recognize that the Parsi community is diminishing, and as proud trustees, both of us have volunteered our services to do our bit to increase the population. So you can't blame us. And that having been said, I never realized we had so much in common with Pablo Escobar, being opium kings and all that kind of thing. Quite dramatic when we think of it. I asked my friends, what are the two characteristics you think of when you think of a Parsi? And they say loyalty and eccentricity. Okay, we'll leave the eccentricity part out now. But loyalty is very important. Since we were part of the opium trade, we swore by the British, Quite a few of us nowadays swear at them, but that time we swore by the British, And it was Apri Rani, means our Queen Victoria, our Queen, Elizabeth, etc. And we're very proud. Now we have Apro King Charles on the throne. And the older community will always swear by the British. This factor of loyalty is also something quite amazing. We're still loyal to an oath or promise we made. We're not sure what the promise was. To a king, we're not sure whom. We don't have the date, so we don't know when we did it or why we did it. But we quarrel with each other about maintaining our oath. So, yes, I guess that brings in the eccentricity part. Friends, we're sitting in this lovely hall, this auditorium that we have. This was donated to us by a Parsi, Seth Olpadwala, Edilji Olpadwala. He owned Byron and Company. But then Byron came into bad times. Companies like Coca-Cola unfortunately started coming in. But during his lifetime, he donated his property, his bungalow, this huge bungalow and land with it, to the community. Well, I'm sure a lot of people have donated land to their own community. But what made him special was that he even paid rent for occupying it to the trust. So to stay in his own place, he paid rent to the trust because he had given the property to the trust. He came across very bad times financially. And piece by piece, the artifacts at his home were sold by his cook to get medicines and food for him. So talk of eccentricity, that loyalty, eccentricity, generosity, I think these are typically Parsi traits. But that's too much of seriousness. Let me get Cyrus to talk to you about another gentleman, Dadi Mazda.
Well, you got the philanthropic side, and what was amazing about Mr. Olpadwala, which Noomi mentioned in just passing, was the fact that he did mention he was in very bad times. And financially, he had absolutely nothing except the place where he stayed, which is where we are today. And the trustees at that time went up to him and said that, look, forget about everything, sell the property, you'll have enough money to live, and look after yourself. We'll manage. And he refused. He said, I've given my word, And that was the loyalty factor that Noomi was talking about. He'd given his word on something. He died with nothing at all. His well-wishers would come and leave groceries and provisions for him outside his door because he'd refused to accept any alms. And that was the way he survived. Today, the community is grateful and has been the beneficiary of the munificence that he bequeathed to us. So, a remarkable man, a man who will always be remembered, and a man who possessed incredible loyalty. But let's come now to some of the fun people that the community had. Daddy Mazda was one of them. He had a great sense of humor. He had incredible language, which most Parsis actually have. And he could articulate that with great aplomb. He had a house in Diga, which was the seaside town away from Calcutta. And he was one of the few people who had a plane. It was a one-engine plane, and he would fly it every weekend or so to go to Diga. He'd land on the beach there, go into the house, and then I think no one took a breathalyzer test when he flew back. But he would get fed up of the fact that he lived on Chaurangi, just next to Bengal Club, and the plane had to be kept at the Barrackpore airport. So he had to go there every time to fly, which meant he may as well have driven to Diga and back, and it would have taken the same amount of time. So he got quite fed up with this exercise. And flying back from Diga once when he was in very good spirits, he decided he wasn't going to land his plane in Barrackpore, and it was quite late in the night, and he decided he would land on Chaurangi. So the story goes, and I'm told this is true because there were quite a few people of his generation who vouched for it when I spoke to them, that he landed his plane on Chaurangi, taxied it down to the house, dismantled the entire plane and put it away in his garage. And when the cops came, because there'd been any number of complaints saying there was a bloody plane landing on the road here, what are you doing about it? And he said, plane? He said, what plane? There's no plane. If there was a plane and I had to park it somewhere, where's it parked? And he got away with that. So that was one of the eccentrics that we had. But sport and pastime is also such a big thing for us. And we've had some great players, and we've had some great characters as well on the cricket field. My grandfather always used to tell me about stories of the old Parsis playing cricket against the British teams. And half the players that they had didn't even have proper attire. So they would come out wearing white pajamas and a white sadra, and some of them might have had a shirt. And the Brits had no idea who was coming in and who was going out because they all looked the same to them. So they used to crib about this and say, you know, what is his name? And he'd say, my name is Pacey. So he would write Pacey in the scorebook. Pacey would get out and he'd go, and about 4 wickets later, Pacey would come back, this time dressed with a shirt over the sadra, and after he'd scored about 15, 20 runs, the British guy standing behind the wickets would tell his captain, he says, hey Cap, this guy looks very familiar, he's playing the same bloody shots the other chap was playing. So they went up to him and said, what's your name? Nariman. Oh, he says, Nariman, is it? But, you know, you see, I wearing shirt. Pacey wear only sadra. I wear shirt. So they used to get away with those things on the cricket field in those days. But we had one contemporary in our time. His name was Motu Bamanji. And to tell you a little about him, one of his closest friends, Noomi.
I had mentioned that, you know, we are very loyal to the British. And the British played cricket, so Parsis played cricket. We weren't very good in cricket, but we were known as a first-class club because at that time, you had to win 5 matches, friendly matches against first-class clubs in order to retain that status. So Parsis had a secret weapon. We would invite the outside teams. We would choose to field first. Having got the fielding out of the way, we would offer them beer, and then, of course, dansak, which, as any Parsi will tell you, is a lethal combination. It has to be followed by a nap. There's no way you can stay awake after eating that and drinking the beer. So Parsis had 3 or 4 batsmen who would duly stay hungry during lunchtime until we fed the opposition and then send them into field. Whilst they merrily scored runs, these guys were yawning, you know. Well, that was Parsi cricket for you. But we had some interesting characters, Motu Bamanji, as Cyrus just pointed out. Motu was mad after cricket. He was also extremely eccentric. He believed in every superstition possible. So one day, whilst a wicket fell and Motu was asked to go into bat, and he was all ready. He had his pads and everything on. And as he was walking, his bat slipped from his hand and fell to the ground. So he turned around, went back and said, "I'm not going into bat." So the captain said, "Motu, you have to go. There's nobody else padded up." "I can't go. Can't you understand? My bat has fallen down. I'll get out. I'm not going." We had to beg and plead, but he refused to budge until one guy ran in with his straps in his hand, putting it into his pocket, one pad on, the other one buckling. Motu refused to budge. He said, "No, I cannot go in. Bad luck. Sorry." But Motu was mad after cricket. One day he came waving a new cricket bat. He had got a Grey Nichols, very special bat from England, at that time unheard of in these parts, particularly in second division where we played. And he was very proud of it, and he was showing everybody. And he showed it to Rusi Jijiboy. So we had already winked at Rusi to pull his leg. So Rusi said, "Terrific bat. What balance. Beautiful, good strokes, lovely blade." But Motu, this is a left-hander's bat. Motu's face fell. Left-hander's bat? Yeah. See the curve at the bottom? It's, it's this way. Motu's left-hander's bat. So he was appealing to us, how? So he said, "Motu, it's left-hander's bat. It's no use to you. Why don't we give it to some left-hander?" And we started discussing names. After a while, Motu caught on. It was just a joke. But, well, this guy was a true character. He loved to sleep early so he could play great cricket. So one evening we went to late in the night. About 10 o'clock, "Motu, come, let's go drink some tea." He said, "No, tomorrow morning is match. I can't drink all." "Come, we'll have a cup of tea next door and then we'll all go to sleep." No. So we dragged him out anyway. Instead of going for tea, we went straight to Nizam's and had kati rolls and had some rice, and eggs, curries, khiri rolls, I don't know, everything possible. And, well, Motu used to sponsor everything because he was a shippy. He used to earn in dollars. And what we couldn't spend, he would waste in the race course. So we had no qualms going to him. So we said, "Mots," and Beji, my friend, said, "Look, let's go Dutch, okay? Whatever we've eaten, we will pay for." So he took out 8 annas from his pocket and said, "That's my share." So Motu was staring at him. "That's your share. Anda curry lao, chicken curry lao, roll lao, anda roll lao. This is your share." And he took it and threw it as hard as he could. He hit some other guy on the head, which embarrassed Motu no end. But then Beji said, "Motu, that's why we brought you here." Oh, the amount he swore at us that evening, and we took him back home and said, "Okay, Mots, now you go to sleep. Enough's enough." Well, that's some stories of the cricket. Cyrus, back to you.
Well, as he said, what he didn't lose by paying Noomi and Beji's bills while eating, he'd lose at the race course. So he'd come racing one day and he took a friend of his along, a guy named Firdos, and he told Firdos, he says, "Here's 500 rupees. You keep this money with you, and irrespective of what I tell you or ask you for, don't give it to me at the race course. Just keep it." Firdos said, "Okay, that's fine." So they went in, and by the third race, Motu was short of money. So he looked at Firdos and he says, give me that 500 that I gave you." So he said, "No, I'm not giving it to you." So "What do you mean you're not giving it to me? It's my money, you give it to me." So he said, "No, you told me irrespective of what you tell me, don't give it." And Firdos could follow things right down to the T. He was a banker. So this went on, and a little crowd now started gathering while they watched the two powers arguing about this thing. Motu kept saying, he's not giving. So the crowd asked, what is the problem? So Motu said that, I gave him my money to keep and he's not giving it to me. So they said, give it. So he said, but he told me not to give it. So he said, no, you can't do all that. He's asking you for the money, give it to him. So Firdaus, in disgust finally, especially with the crowd building and taking Motu's side, pulled out 500 rupees, threw it on the ground and said, take your bloody money. And he pushed off, went off to Parsi Club. About 2.5, 3 hours later, Motu lands up at Parsi Club. Firdaus looked the other way and didn't want to have anything to do with him. He walked up to Firdaus, says, caught him by the shirt. I told you that whatever you do, don't give me that money, and look what you have done. So he said, but I told you, you wouldn't listen to me. And there was a huge fight in Parsi Club over that. So that was the eccentricity coming out right to the fore. But talking of racing, the one person that everybody always talks about is the man who owned the Great Eastern Hotel, Adesha Bilamoria. He loved royalty, just like all old Parsis did. And in 1961, Queen Elizabeth was coming out to India and she was visiting Calcutta and the racecourse to present the trophy of the race named after her, the Queen Elizabeth II Cup. So for 2 weeks before the race, Adesha would go every evening to the Victoria Memorial, and in those days, outside the VM, the statue that was there in the middle of the road was of Queen Victoria. So he would go up to that statue every day with a little garland. And he'd say that, your great-granddaughter is coming here to present, my horse is running, you have to make sure that she gives me the trophy. And if I win the trophy, I will come and put a diamond necklace on you for a day. So this would go on for about a week. Wonder of wonders, his horse, Pa Bear, came out and won the race at a phenomenal price. He was over the moon, absolutely. Now he had to go up to shake hands with the Queen. And that is where all the stories started doing the rounds. I don't believe half of them, but apparently the first question he asked her was, how is father? To which she looked at him and said, well, he passed away about 15 years ago. I said, oh, he said, nobody told me. And the second one, I think, was definitely manufactured, where apparently he thanked her and he said, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart and my wife's bottom too. But I think that was really pushing it. That was really pushing it. So we've had eccentrics on the cricket field, you've had eccentrics on the race course, and of course, how can the Parsi not live without his motorcycle? Kavas Kapadia, one of the stalwarts on the rowing team and a wonderful guy, a heart of gold, had this large BSA motorcycle, which was the love of his life. I'm surprised his wife managed to get in there, because for him it was this or nothing. And Noomi will tell you all about how he used to not carry his wife up 2 floors of stairs, but carry the motorcycle up 2 floors of stairs.
As a matter of fact, we had this tradition of ragging the couple on the first night. We would try to make it as embarrassing as possible. So we waited for about 15, 20 minutes, and then we all trooped to the house and demanded a cup of coffee. And when we went into the house, what do we see right in front of us? His BSA motorcycle in the hall room, while his wife was in the bedroom, and this guy was folding her sari. Poor Kavas, hefty, black belt, judo, muscle, bodybuilder, etc., was more sheepish for more than a month after that. But I'll tell you more about these wedding ragging stories a little later. Let me tell you the story about, Parsi Club is one of the bastions for Parsis. We go there almost every week. Sometimes when much younger, we would go every day over there. Well, one morning, the usual gang was over there, Beji, Motu and myself. And there was this big discussion, who's the strongest one? So I stepped out the discussion early, and Beji and Motu had this, So Motu said, enough is enough. Now it's time to put it to the test. Let's go to Parsi Club. we'll do arm wrestling over there, pancha over there. So Beji agreed, and we went off, trooped off this. There was not a soul on the Maidan. It was hot, middle of summer. We were the only 3 idiots over there inside the tent, and they got ready for this arm wrestling thing. So Beji, as usual, was pulling Motu's leg. He was cheating. He was using 2 hands. He was turning his wrist. And Motu was getting very offended, saying, no, stop all this now. Let's get serious. So Beji said, serious, okay. He took 2 candles and lit it, one on this side and one on that side. And then he said, chalo, jo harega wo jalega. Let's go. So I was appointed the referee. I held their hands and I said, 1, 2, go. And I let the hands go. Beji was holding a glass of water underneath, threw it in Motu's face. Motu shouted, ah! And next second, bang, ah! Beji ran to the tennis courts, Motu chasing in hot pursuit. Well, to cut a long story short, we made up, all 3 friends, and went off to Sabir's for lunch. And of course, Motu paid for everything.
So we've had some wonderful stories on that. And then, of course, you have your own relatives sometimes who have some great stories. I remember going to Bangalore for the first time in 1982 or so, and I'd never met this cousin, my dad's first cousin, and they'd all told me about him, and he was a racing fiend. He loved his racing. And we got to know him, and I got invited to the house by him and his wife, Diana. And they had 11 dogs in the house. And I walk in, and she very sort of condescendingly looks at me and says, you know, I don't think you've met all of them. They're all named after members of your family. So this is Barjor, and this is Jamshed, and this is Firoz, and this is Nariman. And you could see Jimmy cringing. You know, he was bullied totally by her. She was a very, very overbearing woman in more ways than one. And I looked at her and I said, well, Diana, I said, that's remarkable, but how come none of them are named after your family? So she sort of scoffed and looked up. I said, why? They weren't good enough. And I had Jimmy as a friend for life after that. But both of them lived in Bangalore, and in those days they lived right next to Johnson Market, or Russell Market, where it was, and they had 2 cockerels as pets who woke up half the bloody neighborhood every morning because they'd crow at all the wrong times. But their names were Jamtin and Bootlace. Now, Diana, as I said, was quite large. And while at home, she would wear these little doll nighties and sleep in that. So one morning, Jamtin suddenly decided that he wanted to explore beyond the wall and flew over the wall, landed on the road, and a car was passing, and it slugged Jamtin. There was no more Jamtin. And Diana was right behind and saw this happen. So she was livid, ran into the kitchen, pulled up this hatchet that she found over there, and she was chasing the car. This poor man was oblivious of this lunatic woman following behind with an axe in her hand. And he parked about 200 meters further down. She got to the car. He had fortunately left by then, otherwise he would probably have been assaulted. But since she didn't have anyone to assault, she hacked all 4 tires and brought it down to nothing, and it became a police case and it went to court. Now the judge knew both the people involved. So he said, come into my chamber and we're going to sort this out. So they both go into the chamber, and says, Diana, I want you to apologize, and you were totally wrong, and you have to compensate him for what you've done. He says, I'm not going to compensate. Why should I compensate him, and why should I say sorry? He says, well, you've finished his car tires, totally, all 4. He says, yes, but he killed Jamtin. He says, who's Jamtin? He says, my cock. And there was total mayhem in the judge's chamber because he didn't know what the hell was going on in there. So those are some of the funny stories that would take place with relatives that we've got. Remarkable couple. Nooms.
Yeah. Talking about Cyrus's family, very illustrious family, but his father was exceptional person, really exceptional. And like all good Parsis, the old good Parsis, he used every curse word he could think of regularly just to keep in touch. He frequently called Cyrus the product of an unmarried couple in front of his own wife. But he was legendary, and he had this secretary, a middle-aged Parsi lady, who, after hearing volleys of this language, went one day and gave a written resignation letter. So he called her and said, you know, I'm old, I have these habits, and I don't mean anything, and you shouldn't mind. And then by that time, he had quite enough. He said, now don't be a silly bitch. Took the letter, tore it up, and threw it away. That was Jamshed Madan for you. But Jamshed was a great cricketer. You know, he had this fantastic knack of caressing the ball gently into an open spot. So the fielder always thought he had a chance and go chasing it, and that ball would just about creep to the boundary line, cross the rope and stop. And the fielder would come back panting with the ball, and next ball he'd do the same thing again. And that guy would go. I think after 3 or 4 times they just stopped running and just kept walking. Cyrus, as I said, Jamshed was, his father was an extremely wonderful person. So one day we said, Uncle, you must teach us hockey. You must be our coach for hockey. So he said, first I will examine you all. You all play and I will see. So he saw us all playing, and then he came to give us his comments. And he was particularly kind to me. He said, you're so fast, you're so quick, you know. You run so quickly, you run up, you run the back. But why don't you wait for the ball? Of course, accompanied by 1 or 2 PCs and GCs. Wait for the ball. What are you running up and down like a man? So he realized, he thought I had been offended. So he phoned up the next day and said, no, you must come for lunch and let me apologize. And Uncle, there's absolutely no need. No, you must come for lunch. So I went for lunch to Calcutta Club, and I had 2 helpings just to get even. Well, that was Jamshed Uncle for us. Absolutely wonderful person. Back to you, Sai.
So I hope you've been having a good time and laughing and building up an appetite. But how we love to celebrate. I don't think there's any other community anywhere in the world that celebrates the way we do. And to do that, we even have 2 New Years. So you can have it twice over and have double the fun.
Cyrus, correction, we have 3 New Years. We had 2 New Years. The first, let Cyrus tell you about the first one and the second one, then I'll explain the third one to you.
So the first 2, well, we used to follow the Shanshai calendar, where a year consisted of 12 months of 30 days each. The last month would have 5 days added to it, but you weren't taking into account the leap year, so we were at 365. The solar calendar, or the Gregorian calendar, decided that that was different, and they'd have 365 and a quarter days each year. So as a result, what started out as our new year started changing every 4 years and coming back each time. So, for instance, at the moment, Nowruz, which is on the 21st of August, stays on 21st August. But the second one, 21st of March, but the second New Year, which is in August, keeps changing every 4 years. So this year it's on Independence Day, and we'll be celebrating it on that day. But 4 years down the line, it'll be the 14th of August. Yeah. And as we go along, it'll probably come and join March. Fortunately, we won't be around to see it. But at that time, we'll have 1 New Year once again.
You see, I mentioned that there was a third New Year. It's because in between we realized that we had slipped up, because we had these question and answer sessions, you know, the rivayats, which Prochy mentioned. So the rivayats came back and we realized, oh, we've goofed up. So we said, look, let's change it. So we decided to add a month, you know, to get back to the correct. But again, we forgot about it. So the next 2 sects, one was the Shansai and one is the Kadmi. The Kadmi said, no, we should change it again. And we said, no, we mustn't change it. So now we have 2 New Years, also in August, which differ by now a few weeks from each other. And this was a great contentious point, so contentious that people started hammering each other up, and the Gaikwad had to come into it and solve the situation by giving his verdict, arresting a few people, etc. So as I said, eccentric to the hilt, 100%. Sai, back to you.
Well, and as we said, we've been holding on for quite a while. I'd like to end, from my side at least, with a quote from Kushwant Singh. He was the guest speaker at the World Zoroastrian Congress many, many years ago. And he attended it, and he attended quite a few sessions, some of which got pretty vociferous and argumentative. And when he delivered his closing address, he came out with the words and said, he says, you know, what a remarkable community you all are. Every country in the world would be happy just to have you come in and settle there. Because you don't interfere, you don't bother to fight about things that don't concern you. But now, after being with you all for 3 days, I can understand. You're so busy fighting amongst yourselves that you don't have time to fight with anybody else. And he had a very, very valid point in that. So from my side, that's about it. Noomi, your closing.
Parsis are notorious. You have two Parsis, they'll have three opinions. You know, each one has one, and then there'll be a joint consensus for the third opinion. But if you have one Parsi, he'll normally look in the mirror and start arguing. You know? So, you know, we have this craziness about this. But I did tell you about that special blessings that we give the couple on wedding night. So when Prochy and I got married, we were specially blessed by my brother and my brother-in-law. We occupied my brother-in-law's flat for the first night, and he shifted out. But what we didn't count on was the 7 alarm clocks they had placed at all different times. And one of them was a repeater alarm. It kept going. We didn't sleep much that night. I don't tell you why, but we didn't sleep much that night. So we took revenge. Actually, I must tell you how this started. A cousin of ours had got married, and he was again occupying somebody's flat who wasn't in town, so he gave the keys to him. And they were to shift there for the first night. So my brother went very officiously, put a padlock on the door, and said, "Keys to paradise can be found 152 Kanani Estate, come and get them," which was quite close by. So with that for the starter, then came my turn, we got married. I told you what happened. So finally he got married. So he was very careful. He knew of all the mischief that he had done. So he went to the hotel, Oberoi, and gave strict instructions. Under no circumstance give my keys to anybody, only to me. I said, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." What he didn't count on was the fact that we did look alike. So I went over there and said, "I'm Cyrus Mehta, give me my keys urgently. I need it now." So he gave the keys. And we were wondering what we should do in the room. And then I remembered that we knew the general manager. So I phoned him up and said, "Jangir, is there any room that you have that we can completely destroy?" He said, yeah, one room is for renovation, but not the one that he's booked. I said, "Forget what he's booked, change the room." So he changed the room, and we sewed up the bottom of his pajamas, the bottom of a nightie, left messages from all his past girlfriends, left secret notes, and gave instructions and all kinds of various things. And of course, we went to accompany them, to the hotel for our cup of coffee, about 20 of us. So Cyrus got off on the 8th floor where he had booked his room. I said, "Cyrus, wrong floor. Your room is on the 14th floor." "I've booked the room, you're telling me." I said, "Cyrus, your room is 14th floor." All nonsense. So he went out. His wife is half in, half out, not knowing what's happening. And he tried the key, found it didn't work, came back, stood in the lift and said only 2 words, "Oh shit." So we went up, opened the door, and he saw this marvelous design that we had done especially for him. So we sat down, had a cup of coffee, spoke for an hour or so, and then finally he said, "No, enough, Baba, now please go." And then finally we left from there. It's a tradition that we had at that time, but now I don't know how many people do it. Get married, that is. So that's about it from my side. I hope you've enjoyed the little chit-chat to show you the eccentricities, the flavor of our community. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.